I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, Robert.
Antonia.
Thank you for being here, and thank you to all of you. You know, after we get into it for a while, I want to make sure that there's some time for audience questions. So my one ask to all of you is that while we're having this conversation, you think about what's on your mind, and you get ready to ask a question, hopefully not a comment, at the end. And we're going to try to keep them quick so that as many people as possible get to, have a say. All right. So, Robert.
Yes.
The revolution is here.
Yes.
AI seems to be all that anyone at this festival and outside of this festival can talk about right now. But I think we need to do some level setting. To whom is AI actually accessible right now?
That's a great question. And let's first put it all in context if we can. First, let me welcome you all to my home state. I am fourth generation from Colorado. Actually, I have one of my cousins here. I'm excited that he decided to join me. And the reason that's important is our family came here, again, over 100 years ago. We came here looking for equity and peace. Part of our family was chased out of Oklahoma, which you know that story quite well. We settled here and created a community that we learned to rely on each other. We learned to rely on sharing resources and accessing individual capabilities to make our community better. The ranch that I now have proprietorship over actually is the oldest African-American resort community founded by African-Americans. We just celebrated the 102nd year anniversary, and which is important. And it just got recognized this past week as a National Historic Monument. All that's important because what it tells us as Americans is we all count. We all matter. We all make contributions. But in order to do that, we need access to the bounty that is America. The early bounty that is America, of course, was the land. Many of our people didn't have a chance to participate in the Homestead Act, the Southern Homestead Act, that created the basis of wealth. And then you had, of course, the next revolution, the Industrial Revolution. That Industrial Revolution, the tail end of it, we got a chance to participate as workers, as laborers in the Great Migration. Prior to that, of course, a lot of our people were workers but did not get anywhere near the compensation for that. And now we are in this age of a new generation. The computing generation has changed everything. I have the great fortune of working in that area. I was exposed to it at a public high school, same high school my father went to. And it was from an internship experience that I got at Bell Laboratories when I was 17 years old that opened my aperture to understand what technology and what access actually means. And so while I got to go into that environment, there were very few people in my community who got to see what I saw. And it encouraged me to think about my career and education. I ended up becoming a chemical engineer and patent holder and inventor, but it's because I had access to tools and capabilities that very few people in my neighborhood had access to. And so when you think about where we are today, this Gen AI revolution, the early stages of the computer revolution, of course, where compute was actually held by governments, large financial institutions, typically large corporations and universities. And it was those who utilized that compute that were actually able to bring massive amounts of economic expression and capture economic rent in a global marketplace. We then figured out ways to develop that compute at a lower cost, Moore's Law, and distribute that compute in cloud computing that made it more accessible to the world. And so now you see the enhanced global competitiveness. But yet I still see in America that 70% of African American communities don't have access to broadband. And so when you think about that, if we are to compete as a nation going forward, we need access. All of our citizenry needs access to the bounty that is compute. And now this next generation of Gen AI, who has access to that? Well, first, if you don't have broadband, you surely won't have access to that. So we've got to solve that problem before we go to the next problem. And then once you gain access to it, what is it that these models are going to be trained on so that when they go into an inference state, they actually have referenceable capacity or capability that actually represents who we are as a society? And so who has access to it? It is like every other, those with capital first, those with intention second, and what is their intention in terms of the distribution of that capability? And I think those are the questions that we're going to actually have to address and wrestle to the ground. There's going to be large institutions that capture most of that for the next few years. And then at some point, it will be distributed, and there's arguments about distributing. Everyone should have, universal compute. But if you don't have broadband, it doesn't matter if you have universal compute credits, right? You don't have access to that capability. And those are the things that this audience needs to think about and wrestle with, because what kind of society will we be if we don't make it more inclusive to the ideas, the creativity, and ultimately the productivity? Because that's what keeps our nation strong, that's what keeps our economy strong, is our ideas and our people and our ability to innovate and drive forward.
Well, I have to tell you, just a few days ago, right here, we got to hear from Sam Altman and Brian Chesky. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting to be in that room. And I have to tell you, as I watched them respond to some of the existential questions that my colleague Lester Holt had for them. This isn't a direct quote, but it seemed that their answer to a lot of these questions, these concerns about equality and safety in the future, ultimately boiled down to, well, you're going to have to trust us and the teams and the experts that we install around us for now. And while I saw excitement and faith in that room, certainly, every single person of color that I spoke to after that panel had some level of uneasiness, mm-hmm. of discomfort. So what is their and what is your moral responsibility right now?
Sure. It is a, first of all, trust but verify posture that needs to be taken. And I actually spend time talking with Sam about this directly. And I propose some constructs that, may manifest in ways that create an inclusionary environment at multiple layers, and not just for African Americans in this country or people of color in this country or marginalized communities in this country, but we have to think globally in terms of what this technology is capable of accomplishing and what it's capable of delivering in terms of the benefits of society, and also some of the risks that it can pose if not managed properly. And I am optimistically hopeful in the conversations that I'm having with Sam and others on the board that managing this the right way actually can make the adoption, the utilization, and the fear factor go down on one hand, but the utilization to increase, where people will say, I'm willing to contribute some of my best selves, my best thinking, my cultural fabric to the learning environment, the information about our bodies, because if you think about this, a lot of these are going to be used for drug discovery and pharmaceutical. Well, you have to have inclusive environments for the data that actually will suggest what are going to be the outputs that can be helpful. And I was on the phone yesterday.
We know historically black people get excluded.
With the exception of Henrietta Lacks, but that's a whole other conversation. There's an important element of building infrastructures that are systemically including people, not just episodically, hoping that it happens. And I think when you say, what is our moral responsibility? What is my responsibility? It is to, whatever platform that you all have access to, bring this forward. Think about creative ways to create those on-ramps of inclusion for the data, the information, the thoughts, the ideas, the values, and make sure that they become part of, and I'm going to say this generally, the training of these systems. Because everyone knows, well, those in the space, that if you don't train these systems on the data, they will be excluded in the inferences, right, in the actual execution. And sure, we can say, oh, we can tune it and fix it later. But as you well know, when there are systemic issues that propagate in large systems, they often cause a tremendous amount of damage before you actually can wind them back. So I do have a lot of confidence that there are a lot of smart people thinking about this, and I have the great privilege of meeting and spending time with some of those people and sharing with them ideas and hearing how those ideas get inculcated in their work. But that said, there probably aren't enough people that look like you or I who are doing that. And I think building systemic infrastructure to make that happen is an important part of your job and an important part of my job on the execution side. You have to bring voice. You have to bring awareness. You have to bring a knowledge to powers that can influence where this goes. I have to bring capability and people and insights and that are very much in the sphere that I live in, which is
well, let's be real.
Software.
How many of you are there? And are they at the table?
I don't know how many, very few, but part of my job is to create more. Part of your job is to create more and to support those that are on that pursuit. You know, those entrepreneurs, we build, as you know, a number of infrastructure systems. Our Intern XL is one that I talk about. We've now got, I think it's 29,000 STEM students, African-American STEM students from HBCUs and MSIs that we actually build now. I think we now have 57,000 course hours or courses that have been taken and completed. Over 650 courses in training and development and certification. Again, just STEM students, and my aunt always gets mad. Well, what about the artists? But I'm working on STEM right now, so I can only do so much. But all that's an important part of building these on-ramps so that they have the sort of internships that I had when I was 17 years old that awakens them to the opportunities. And frankly, as employers, again, the platforms that you all are part of or own or manage, hire these interns. Let them experience what this world is about. Let them get engaged in the dynamic of change and in adopting newer technologies, Gen AI. So don't just bring them in and put them in an department that isn't embracing it. Putting them in a department that actually is embracing and utilizing Gen AI. Those are all important on-ramps to their development. And then, of course, as they are employees, how do you ensure that they not only feel comfortable in the environment, but you have created an inclusive environment, not just inclusive of of gender or race, but inclusive of ideas. And that's an important part. That's why these ideas festivals are important. Okay, how do you actually scale and structure those? Our private equity firm, we own 85, 86 software companies today. Actually, we just closed one today, so 86. And we have, I think it's one of the only gender parity private equity firms on the planet. I have 100% of my boards have at least one woman, and 100% of my boards have at least a person of color. But it doesn't just happen. You have to actually build infrastructure so that that occurs and that it is supported and that the value and the benefits of it are expressed in the performance of the companies and of the businesses and of the institutions. So we all have a responsibility to think about the platforms that enable this to happen at scale, that are sustainable at scale. That's the way we approach it, and that's the way I think about it.
I think some of the fear right now comes from the fact that this isn't just a theoretical or future-focused concern. There's already evidence that, for example, in the housing space, AI-enhanced algorithms are leading landlords to deny housing to renters through systems that have actually given them inaccurate information about those very renters, the majority of whom are poor and people of color. I actually spoke the other day to a woman who spent about 9 months getting denied from an apartment or apartment buildings all over the Kansas City because of one of these models. Has the train left the station?
As an eternal optimist, I'm going to say no, but it is important that that story is brought forward, because that's what will retune these models, and you come back and say, guess what, we got this wrong. I'm at my core and my heart a scientist, and as a scientist and engineer, you try something, you look at the results, say, not quite what I wanted, now I have to retune it. But it depends on what is the outcome that you're looking for. And I think it's important that we frame what is the outcome that we want. Do we want a fair and equitable society? Do we want a society where everyone has the ability to contribute their best selves? When you have that, a couple things happen. A, you get productivity, which we need. B, you actually decrease risk, which is always important. C, it makes us more competitive. And we, as an American society that now has distributed computing power globally, and now we've distributed, in many instances, Gen AI capacity globally. We've trained a bunch of people in our great university systems and said, now go work somewhere else, go live somewhere else. So the level of competition has enhanced exponentially from the time when I graduated from college. At that time, compute was localized. It was managed by, smaller groups of institutions. And when we educated people from other countries, we encouraged them to stay. We encouraged them through the infrastructure to become Americans. We encouraged them to bring their best selves and their contributions to our society. That no longer is the case, and so the level of competition has gone up. So we have to actualize all the citizenry that we have available to us, and we have to actualize all of the, I call it we should be the place where the smartest people in the world want to come and live and work and want to contribute. And some of those smartest people in the world actually are in these communities who are getting denied housing. The creativity, the thoughtfulness, the understanding of the complexities in those communities, that has to be built into the model. So as you're writing these models, you have to go find these people and get them become a part of the contribution of the learning, okay, and the training, so that you don't have these sort of instances that you had in Kansas City. And when they do happen, it is incumbent upon your industry to say, this is not working, we need to do something about it, and it's incumbent upon everyone out here to say, we need to change what is happening, because that cannot stay. And because that is not gonna be a sustainable outcome, in that case, for the Kansas City community. We have to make sure we think about this holistically as a community of, and I'm going to say this, of Americans to make this all work.
What advice would you give right now to young college students looking out at this rapidly changing world,
Yeah.
trying to figure out how they're going to make a mark in it, how they can get a piece of the wealth that's about to be built? What do you tell them?
I tell them, I guess, the same things I tell my own children who are of that age. I tell them right now, when my kids in their 20s, the ones in that age group, I said, right now I want you to focus on building a set of skills. I want you to think about what are the skills of the future that are going to be helpful, contributory to the communities that you care about. One community you care about typically is yourself and your family, and then the community that you live in, the community that you came from, and what are the skills that actually can deliver value into those set of communities. So that's the first thing. And then the next thing I tell them is start developing the habits, and the habits that are helping you to become an efficient and effective member of that community. There's all sorts of habits. There'll be personal habits and study habits and work habits and connectivity habits. Habits like coming to the Aspen Ideas Festival. How do you make this accessible so that, and this is part of that, so people can learn from people on the stage and in the audience what made them successful in their time. There's a lot of things that made us successful in our time that will still apply for these young people to be successful in their time. There's a lot of things that they will learn that we aren't even aware of quite yet that will make them successful. But encouraging a dynamic of that constant curiosity and engagement, and then building skills and habits that actually can accelerate their career. That's the advice I specifically give them. I can't tell you, 10 years ago I would have said, go study writing code. That was important because we had a massive dearth of developers. I mean, we constantly had 5,000, 10,000 open recs for developers. Well, now, with Gen AI, Code Assist, code. Guess what? That is kind of decreasing. So, now you have a different sort of developer that you need, those who know how to write prompts and utilize code assist. So that's a different set of skills, okay? But you still have to have the habits of understanding how to drive that forward into a productive way of your life and approaching your life. And so those are the things that I tell them very specifically on what to do, and hopefully it sticks, especially my kids, because I need them off the payroll one day. But
so
that's a whole other conversation.
So what is going to happen to our jobs? We know the old saying that we are the first to be fired, last to get hired.
Yeah. Certain in-state jobs will go away. No question. Gen AI, we'll see if they get convergence in this latest set of models. They're having a hard time getting to kind of third levels of nested tasks, but who knows? I'm sure some re-architecture they may get there, and likely will, is my guess. And there's going to be certain jobs that will always be in demand, some of which will be exciting, creative, thoughtful, and some of which will be the things that are essential to keeping society running, right? Like all of us in here probably can't find a decent plumber or electrician half the time, right? Yeah, right. That will not go away with Gen AI, but the scheduling of them will make it more efficient and will create more efficiency in that kind of a model. We will need people who are thoughtful about utilizing these tools to solve some of society's problems. We were talking just briefly about drug discovery, okay? And well, how do you look at that for certain physiologies and in certain countries and in certain places, and what's the impact? Climate change. How do we think about utilizing these tools to literally change the way that we are interacting with our environment and decreasing the amount of carbon output and making more efficient the way that we manufacture and produce? You have to have some understanding of what the challenge is to bring these tools to bear. So you're still going to need some fundamental, knowledge and education to solve some of these problems. Certain tasks will absolutely go away. Certain new ones will actually become much more valuable in the future. So
any sectors you think are going to be in the near future completely unrecognizable?
All of them. I don't want to say completely unrecognizable. They will all evolve. We have the good fortune in our portfolio. We are in about 70 different industries. And I can see, in some cases, truly evolutionary change in what Gen AI will bring from a products or services or solutions perspective to that specific industry. Some it's going to be a little more, some will be completely transformative in short periods of time. Some will be slowly evolving. Efficiency models typically will be the ones we'll see first, right? How do you route the plumber to the best place at the right time, or route some device to fix something at the lowest cost, or how do you do it to optimize some output for CO2 so that you can actually minimize impact on the planet and live more gently in this world? Some of which will say we don't need to do it that way at all, right? We don't need to do drug discovery that way at all. And I think each of those will benefit at different levels and different rates. Education is a classic one. Our children are going to be educated completely differently, utilizing these Gen AI tools and companions and buddies that will help them learn the way that they learn best and accomplish the tasks that we think are important as a society or as a school system that they should learn. They will do it completely differently than the way we do it, and they will probably accelerate faster because they'll hone in on what are the challenges. We have one of our companies that has some of that capability and technology today, and it's amazing to me because they have the unique data sets around the children or the school system or the environment in which they are instructed to live. They will accelerate on their learning curves in ways that will be mind-blowing for us years from now. And then we'll say, well, of course, that's going to transform their lives. Now, all that said, we have to be thoughtful about what it is that we are teaching them and what are the values that we're saying are important. Inclusionary environment. How do you get the best ideas to now participate in the dialogue and the discussion of invention? or risk management or optimizing a business or business infrastructure. If you only are looking and getting this group of ideas, then you're going to have an outcome that's optimized for that, which may not be long-term sustainable for the way that our whole planet is evolving and becoming more, diverse in its mindset and in the people.
So many of our diverse minority communities in the United States, they're the trendsetters in food, music, art, culture. These systems are training on them as they take our words, our paintings, our music. What do they owe us in response?
I think what they owe us is an authenticity to who we are. We are complex like every other group of people on this planet and deserve to be heard and deserve to contribute and deserve to benefit from what these systems will ultimately produce. We have to be thoughtful about what that actually means. Many of the parts of the community I get to interact with, as you said, or I get to interact with a lot of scientists and technologists, but the artist community is saying, well, wait a minute, what am I getting out of this, right? But we also have to hold these institutions accountable if they are utilizing them as a training. It's the Henrietta Lacks story again, right? Yeah, okay, that's the early training systems if you think about it, and only decades later that a family got a portion of the benefits that this one person.
And she's just one case we know about.
That's one case, yeah, that we know about, right? And so it's important that we know about these things. So again, your industry has to bring.
You're giving me homework, okay?
Yeah, of course. It is an important thing. You play a very vital role in that construct to identify. Here are some things that need to change, and here's ways in which we can change it. Not just the critical aspects of it, but here's ways in which to change it. We, and I'm going to say as Americans, have the benefit, honestly, of having the most diverse population on the planet. And so by that very fact, we should have the best models, so long as we ensure that inclusionary process occurs. And by that very fact, we should have the most productive tools and the most robust economy and the most innovative technologies and entertainment and all those sort of things all come from the fact that we have the most diverse environment. So we have to celebrate that and make sure it is included, which means access to broadband, access to compute, access to the knowledge. I'll give you an example. We own a company, Stats Perform, largest database of sports data in the world, 6.5 petabytes. We had about 1.2 petabytes of data per year in this system, 10 times more than anyone else. And I noticed that in our HBCUs, they did not have access to a lot of the Gen AI, and this is very much an AI-centric, AI-focused company. And it fuels most of you who get sports data and information from all that, they basically get it from us because of the way that we've approached this market. So we said, you know what, we need to change this. So when I talk about using your platform, so we took the company and we said, let's create a AI curriculum and let's go deliver it, and we delivered it at Morehouse. Now we're going to do it at Spelman, of course, because I know you're about to ask me that. Where now these students now can participate and understand how we utilize this technology, how to engage with it, and how to use it for its predictive capabilities on the one hand, which is a great outcome, but also to understand what the impact of it is. Again, but you have to actually go deliver that into the communities where those kids, those students live. And that's an important part. So any of you who are running businesses, deliver that opportunity, that on-ramp, so that more diverse people can participate in the environment that you run, manage, or are involved in.
When you talk about some of these solutions, like making sure our fellow Americans have access to broadband, do you think leaders are taking these things seriously and seeing them in the context that you're spelling out? I mean, especially after last night, there are a lot of people worried that our leaders are not up to a whole number of tasks.
Yeah.
And do we really think they even understand Gen AI? I mean, seriously.
So I'll tell you one thing that's been interesting. A number of them have taken upon themselves, and one of my good friends, Chuck Schumer, for instance, they do a lot of educating and informing and bringing business leaders in and Gen AI leaders in to inform them. You don't hear about it in the press because they're like, we just need to understand what it is. Because as you all know, what's going to happen is going to get regulated, right? And we all want it regulated properly. It's going to be done in arrears, and that kind of is what it is. That's the way the government works, typically on innovations. But many people are actually taking this on to educate themselves. However, not everyone does have access to it, and not everyone recognizes the importance of it. I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, a year ago, one of the things we discovered, of course, during COVID, that our communities lived in broadband deserts. And at that time, 82% of the HBCUs, we've solved a lot of those problems, but we're still solving, but we're living in these broadband deserts. And our students and our kids had to go to sit in the parking lot of the local fast food restaurant and tie in to do their homework. And so then there was a BEAD funding, $100 billion of BEAD funding, and you said, great, that's government's going about this the right way, at least getting some funding allocated. But then the way it works is it actually gets distributed at the state level. So I don't know all of your background, but a lot of my relatives and seniors participated in the military, but they did not gain access to the GI Bill. So
Same.
Right. So the GI Bill was a federal program, but distributed at the state. And so when my forefathers went into the state, they said, no, you don't get access to college. You can go to trade school. Oh, the trade school is actually owned by the person who's making that distribution, and they're getting paid $62 to train them to be carpenters and masons and that sort of thing. So it's the same sort of dynamic where it actually is distributed at the state. So when we looked into this, what we found out was they went out and surveyed the communities, but they did not hit our communities. So we put our whole initiative against it now. We had over 5,000 community members. We had, I think now it's 70 town halls that contributed and actually got the data built in to say, here's how these communities can benefit from utilizing this funding. I went to the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, and said, this needs to be built in, because it came out of Commerce, into the NTIA funding so that they can actually get the broadband access dollars into the communities where there's 82% disparity or no access to it. But I will tell you, had we not done that work, they would have never included those communities in where that funding would go. So part of what you have to do is when you identify those problems is actually put whatever capacity you have against it to solve it. Because I said, the last thing I want is the same thing that happened to our parents and grandparents and no access to the GI Bill to happen to these students and no access to broadband funding. So let's see, because now they're starting to write the checks as to where it actually gets distributed, if it actually makes it to the communities who need that access. That's all a part of, again, the fabric that we have to bring as business leaders, as community leaders, as spokespeople for our community, to make those changes in areas where there's that disparity. That's an important part of our work.
What do you think of the argument that has been made at times that some of what would have mitigated some of these concerns is, well, maybe we could have kept all of this in a nonprofit, open source, publicly acceptable or accessible model before we let the for-profit, closed source model take over?
Yeah, I will tell you, while not an expert at the nonprofit space, even though I spend a fair amount of my time and energy and effort, most of the innovations that I have seen hit communities more broadly and more effectively have come out of the for-profit sector. I think it's important to have these private, public partnership type dynamics. But when I look at some of the more innovative ideas, thoughts, institutions, most of that kind of gets directed towards I'll call it the for-profit area. But it's important that we, again, bring the dynamic where we have the ability to bring that into a societal benefit, not just, I'll call it a shareholder benefit, but more of a stakeholder benefit. Sometimes that gets a little flack, right? But, the stakeholders are the ones that keep things sustainable. Okay, they're the ones that actually keep that community stable, that employee population stable, that the shareholders actually get the benefits and they see that, oh wow, because you all have made it more inclusive and you've made a more stable community in which this company lives, you actually decrease the risk. There's thousands of studies from McKinsey and BCG and all these smart folks that show that actually decreases the risk and actually enhances typically the profitability and enhances the growth. So those are the things I think are important. As we live in a capitalistic society, I think making sure that capitalism is underpinned by the ability to innovate, to optimize in their innovation, call it ability to innovate, which is access to people, access to capital, access to ideas, and in this case, in Gen AI, access to newer technologies. I am sure that there will be some reining in ultimately, because some of these technologies actually change the national security stance of nations, right? And so ultimately, I think there's going to be some of that dynamic that's going to come to play. But I do believe that the best technologies belong in instances of environments where people are looking to optimize them for profit, but they have to do it in a way where they're actually thinking about the broader, call it societal impact of the work that they're doing.
What are some actionable, easy steps that someone could take right now if they feel isolated or confused by all of this, to get into the space, to better understand it, get their hands on these tools, or even just get themselves up for a job?
Yeah, depends on who you are. If you are a business owner, one of the most important things is to now engage with what I'll call trusted institutions about utilizing these tools. In some cases, it might be an existing software provider that is actually introducing some Gen AI solutions that make your business more successful, or that you can help your customers become more successful. Engage there, because they're already a trusted partner. They likely have, the data sets and the workflows to understand your business a lot better than, some outside consultant type of a person. So that's kind of one as a business owner. If I think about it as a manager in one of those businesses, start to bring in different vendors to evaluate how are these tools, from what they're saying, how they're actually being used, and actually figure out what is the productivity that comes from utilizing this. Just to give you an example, we have in our companies, we measure the productivity of the actual products that our portfolio companies sell to their customers. Today, it's about a 640% ROI. So that's the actual product that we sell to our customers. When we're looking now at these Gen AI solutions, just to give you a sense, 100% of our companies now have some code assist or code development, utilization of Gen AI. We're about 80% now that actually have some product in marketplace or under development. We'll be at 100% by the end of the year. So we're now starting to measure what is the productivity enhancements. Certain cases of productivity enhancements is 50 to 100% of what that 640% ROI actually is today. That's the impact that technology is making them from what we can see. So as a manager of a business and an operation, I would start to think about how do you utilize these tools, educate your people, give them access to these tools so that they can actually use that in their day-to-day work. As an employee or someone coming into this environment, I think the most important thing is educate yourself as to what are the areas that I call it you have sphere of influence over if you're in production or marketing or finance, and what are the tools that are being used there, and why are they being touted as being effective in that environment, and start to work on it. And those skills and habits again, right? Develop a new skill. Okay, that new skill might be prompt engineering or utilizing different prompt engineering tools that help you think about, here's the workflow that I normally go through. What does this actually enhance my ability to do, to create, to eliminate waste, and get very much engaged and involved in it? This is going to be a participatory sport, okay? And those who participate, I think, will capture disproportionate benefits. If you stand back with fear about what it is, that fear will likely manifest, okay, and because you will not understand that. But if you really start to understand the impact of it, you'll see, I don't want to say this word lightly, the infinite possibilities of it. But from that, you'll also start to recognize what the risks are. And that's how you can start to bring in your own knowledge and experience and say, here's a risk that comes from us utilizing this tool in that environment. And here's what we need now to manage what we need to do to manage that risk in that environment. So again, it is a participatory sport at different levels that we all have to think about what is it, where is our sphere of influence, and how do we bring our best selves and impact to that environment.
Do you have a call to action, something you want corporations, software developers, regulators to think about right now?
Yeah, there are a bunch of calls to action. If I think about one of the most important that I say is the inclusion of our society into this, this transformational moment. And that's at all levels. That means everything from opening up, having internships, to training, to developing, to making sure that even the, those who are generating these models and building these models have built and are establishing inclusionary constructs that aren't episodic, but are going to be systemic in the way that these products are built and developed and delivered and tested. And I think it is important that the government and the regulatory environment continues to get informed, not just in how the tools can work and how they do work, but their impact, okay, both positive and negative, and start to think holistically about what it is that we need to embrace, what are the things we need to regulate, and what are the things we need to unleash in terms of what this capacity can mean for our overall, overall well-being. You think about the tool to be used for environmental protection, right? How do you do that? Okay, there's protecting by regulating, but there's also protecting by let's be smart about the investment so we actually, limit the impact. Live more gently, still be productive, but how do we do this and live more gently? And create less impact on the environment. All those are elements that I'd like to see our government lean more towards, not to say that they're not, but to lean more towards in terms of a call to action. But you need to have smart, capable, engaging people in those environments who are engaging with business community, engaging with the university community, engaging with the communities of people who feel that they might be left out. What is it? Why am I afraid of this? I don't know what it is, but I'm afraid it's going to take my job. Okay, get down in that community and understand what their concerns are and think about how you can bring them forward to participate in this and how they can see the benefits. Maybe better medical care, better treatment, lower, shorter wait lines, ability to actually get, government services more efficiently.
So do you believe then that this could be used actually to reduce discrimination?
No question, but you have to build it in. Right? You have to build, it's like any other model, you have to build a construct that says, here's what our design points actually should be. And the nice thing is there's enough data out there that shows, guess what? More diverse environment, lower risk, okay, higher profits, faster growth. So long as they kind of understand that as part of the model, then it should naturally encourage that. But if you don't build that part in the training, then it will not view that as a factor to be considered. And like all tools, it's going to have to be tuned, but we have to be thoughtful about the cycle of the tuning and the tuning mechanisms and who is actually involved in that. And that's all part of being a society that is absolutely participating in this, not just standing and watching, being a bystander to it.
Well, I promised I would leave time for others to ask you some questions, but before I do so, I just want to thank you. And I have to say, I hope you're traveling all around the country talking about this, because you've made it make a lot more sense, frankly, than I've seen others do.
Well, thanks for saying that.
I've left a lot of these conversations actually more frightened. And so
I get a chance to travel around the world and have this conversation because I believe it is a world issue. It is a humanity issue. And it is important that we bring voices that matter, which are all voices, to the table, and ensure that people are very thoughtful about it and try to impress upon them that if we get this right, we will all really benefit from it.
I just hope you're not alone in that fight.
Well, yeah, thank you for saying that. I am not.
All right, you right there in the front. Someone's going to run over to you with a microphone.
I usually just have my relatives ask questions, but since you're going to ask random people,
get to choose.
We will deal with that too.
I can bring it to her cousin next if you want. Awesome. Thank you for the time, Robert. My name is Juan Bermudez. I work at a Series B startup called Peregrine. We do data integration and analysis for public safety agencies. As a hiring manager on my team, I've been thinking a lot about how can we make this team more diverse? What are the things we can do? And you mentioned Stats Perform and the kind of active, go out onto campuses, that type of work. I think Peregrine's a little too early on to work on things like that. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on building diverse teams, even earlier on in the stages that a company may be in when you're much smaller?
We do that. That's a great question. Thank you for asking it, because I get a chance to answer it in ways that actually work. We do this for all of our portfolio companies. One of the most important things is open the aperture of recruiting. What often happens, of course, is you find a talented person like you went to this school, you were a part of this fraternity, and so now you just go there and just milk that for all it's worth for the next 5 generations of employees, right? And you're like, wow, our employee population isn't that diverse. Well, no kidding. You recruited from the exact same place. So what we do, part of Intern XL, why we built that in the first place, was so that we could bring a broader aperture of students into the pipeline. Point number one. Point number two, you have to skill certain of those students because they may not have the same sort of experience. So that's why we have the training modules, right? Point number three, build something on the backside of your institution, your company, that says, all right, we're taking 3, 5, 10, 30, 50 of these interns a year. Here's the way that we're going to manage them through the process so they have a supervisor, and I call it a big buddy, i.e. someone who can have a penalty-free conversation with. Have them for 2 or 3 years. So you get a good look at them, they get a good look at you, and by the time you're done with that, you figured out, oh, of those 50 people, there's 25 that we'd really like to hire, right? But build those pipelines. I think it's important to think about it systemically and not episodically. And often what I see in corporations is they do it episodically. Oh, let's do an intern program this year. Okay, right? And they might find 3 interns and 1 works out and they're like, that's good, we're done. That worked out really well for us. We got 800 employees and 1 of them is diverse. Underpin it for 10 years. Say, we're gonna do this for 10 years. And if you say, okay, I'm gonna bring in 3 for 10 years. And then probably by the 4th year, you're gonna say, man, we should go to 5 because this is great. Oh, then we should go to 8. But make a corporate commitment to do it for at least a decade because it takes a while for these mechanisms to start to work. And again, you're welcome to come to our, Intern XL and be a part of that. We've got 600-700 corporate partners, but that's an important part of that process, is opening the aperture and then developing an infrastructure that helps those students be successful in understanding how to navigate the infrastructure and understand what skills and habits are required for them to be successful in your company. Yeah, great question. You should be a relative. That's a good relative question.
He's in the family now?
Yeah, yes, for sure.
Hi, Mr. Smith.
Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry.
No, please.
Hi, Mr. Smith. It's good to see you. Carrie Gray, and my work is about advancing opportunities for disabled people of color. I have a question. So just a couple of hours ago, 19 Keys on his platform, Higher Learning, he released a post saying that CNN denied all Black media access to any Black company that applied to get media access. And I find that that's very relevant across a lot of industries about still lacking the opportunity to even get one person in the door. I'm wondering if you have experienced a fight in your work in terms of being able to enter into spaces and industries before, and what is important about that fight?
Yeah, I experience a fight every day. Yeah, every day. You're gonna experience it probably in a half hour, right? I mean, that's just the nature of being an African American and an African American male in the industry that I'm in. I saw that Roland Barton sent me a note, and Byron Allen sent me a note on this yesterday. He said, man, do you believe this? I'm like, yeah, I can believe it. Am I upset about it? Yeah, but okay, who should do something about this? CNBC. CNN. Not that it was on your channel.
I am not CNN.
No,
NBC News.
I know. But I'm saying that only because all of you should have an outcry. You see what I mean? When I see an injustice done in the private equity industry for African American and Latino managers, I actually say something. And sometimes I get a skewer here and there, but I know as an industry incumbent now, wasn't right? It's important for me to raise my voice and say that is wrong, and we need to do something about that. And that's what I mean, the community. Everybody had, you have your voice in that regard. Look, I don't know if they fixed that, because I just saw this last night when Byron and Roland sent it to me. And I'm like, okay, guys, I'm not in the media business. What do you want me to do about it? But I can say something about it, right? Which I'm saying now.
NABJ and others have called them out.
Good.
The Association for Black Journalists.
Yeah, I'm sure they did, right? Which is great. But that's an important thing that has to happen, that you have to actually build the coalitions that take the stand. And sometimes you got to actually build trade organizations, because you might get skewered by taking the stand, right? But those are the dynamics that are important in really being an authentic participant in the community, not just saying, oh man, well I got mine and I'm getting paid. No, you've got to actually understand how to build your community's capacity.
I think we have time for one more question.
I called on him because he looks like a relative, don't you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I run a venture fund where all our investments are seed stage, and all the founding teams are diverse: Black, brown, female, LGBTQ.
Good job.
Part of the way we got there is building our own team to look like that. So bluntly, I'm the only white guy in the shop that I put together.
Yeah.
So expanding on your prior question of opening the aperture on networks and recruiting and so forth, how do we get more people on my side of the table who look more like you than me?
Yeah, told you he was a relative, didn't I tell you? Okay.
Cousins?
Yeah, see? Again, it is, access to opportunity. And I know I sound a little bit like a broken record, but internships to me are the greatest way to create exposure. We have from our Frontiers Fellows program, or Girls Who Invest programs, and in what I figured out, not just me, but there's a whole lot of brilliant people who have no idea that our industry actually exists. Okay, I grew up in Denver, Colorado on 26th and Cook. I had no idea there's a thing called private equity. Okay, and I became an engineer. Why? Because I heard it was a pretty good job, and I went to Bell Labs. I'm like, wow, man, that guy makes $42,000 a year. I mean, I didn't think you made any more money than that, right? And then I get exposed to this thing called Wall Street. Well, what's that all about? What do these people do? And but it took years for me just to see how our society worked, how capitalism worked, and where I could participate. And internships and engagement, I think, is one of the most important things we can do. Let's engage them at age 15, 16, 17, 18. Host these sorts of events where we're bringing a lot of young people, have you and I and Ben Horowitz and a bunch of other people saying, hey, let me tell you what I do for a living. Let me tell you why that's cool. Let me tell you about the companies we invest in. Let me tell you things went great. Let me tell you about things that didn't go so great. All of that's an important part of educating and informing the communities that don't necessarily see this. And it's incumbent upon us to continue to do that. And guess what? We will start, when they start figuring out how much money you make in that industry, they're like, man, forget that. Forget that basketball. So I'm doing that, right? But that's an important part of contributing in our society, is to educate, inform, and create the on-ramps of opportunity. That's what I focus on. Great question.
Thank you, Robert.
No, it's my pleasure.
This was really a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, it was good.
Very, very grateful to you.
Pleasure to be here.
And thank you to all of you for being here.
Yeah, and welcome to Colorado again. Have fun here. All right.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.